Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. Today I have a brief revisit by proxy of the Hotwire Foam Factory's 3D scroll table. I've been using it recently to begin a large project which I wanted to introduce today and do a preliminary check-in with the customer on the work that's been done so far. To sum it up succinctly, this customer has contracted me to build a castle on the theme of the Lord of the Rings evil forces. Now, in the book, there are numerous forces and books, I should say, right? Books. Numerous forces, and there are several, bastions where they've holed up. And so the customers provided me several pictures to look at, to use as a guide as well, and those pictures actually led me to the original site where the pictures were taken. And this is a model master who has painstakingly tried to recreate many of these structures with incredible detail and a lot of labor, and they're beautiful. And I'm not going to be able to replicate those to that degree, probably in part because I don't feel like I have quite that skill yet, but also just the amount of man hours that have been put into those structures I can't even comprehend them. So I'm going to show you those pictures in a second, and what I wanted to do is give you a sense of the inspiration that I've drawn from them. And what I'd like to do is create something that's inspired by them, something that has, a hint of that sort of evil facade, but is distinctly unique. And I'm borrowing from a few different projects, which I'll explain as I go through. And what I'm doing today is really giving you a sort of intro into the project, as this is going to be an ongoing project that's going to go span multiple months, and I'd like to document many of the stages along the way, and will require numerous check-ins with the customer as we move forward. So this is going to give you a good chance to see where the project begins, and also to see, again, some of the potential that the Hotwire scroll table has, as I've been finding it to be very valuable in this project, which I'll explain in a little bit. So what I'd like to do first is I'd like to show you the photos of the buildings that I'm referencing, and discuss a little bit about some of the key features that caught my eye that I'm using as a guide to kind of move forward. And then we can I can show you the work that I've done today, and get a sense of where we're going to go in the future.
So here we can see the Black Gate model, and the Black Gate has, of course, several wall sections and a couple very prominent towers. The thing about the towers that caught my eye are the ribs of spikes going up the sides of them, as well as the very aggressive sharp points at the top. Here we see the black wall, and again noticing the ribbing on the walls, very spiky, very ominous. And here we see Sauron's tower, which I believe is Orthanc. And this is a unique structure amongst them all in that it has a lot of very intricate detail on it. A lot of ribbing. Here you see an unpainted version of it. A lot of cuts, a lot of delicate structures adorning the sides. And in this close-up, a lot of that ribbing really shows through, and you can see the immense amount of detail on it. And that the sort of veins along the bottom were something that caught my eye with this piece. And here we're looking at baraad-dur, and this is a large structure that has multiple turrets, multiple walls. And again, though, here I was noticing a lot of sweeping angles, a lot of veins and bladed type shapes. And here you see the full structure, and you can see that it's got almost a dark elf feel for the Warhammer players. It's got a lot of those sweeping curves, and this is what I originally thought I would start to move towards when I began the first leg of this project. Here I see Cirith Ungol, and this actually is probably more along the lines of where I'm going. We can see here some brickwork, sort of buttress-like, structures against the walls. Very nice opening to the archway with lots of teeth. Again, the spike motif coming through. And here's a close-up of the wall, showing some of the reinforcements along the top of the wall, on the flanks of the picture, and some of the decoration that's been put into the walls as well. And one last note that's important that I didn't realize at first is that Cirith Ungol, shown here, is the only structure that shows actual brickwork. And I think after, thinking about it in retrospect, the other structures shown have been built as to be quite small models relative to their size, and therefore the bricks kind of aren't needed because of the scale involved. And so building something larger, I think I need to add the bricks, and I'll discuss that later.
So just before I go to the work, just to explain what I built and where it goes, this is a brief sketch of the general layout of what the castle will entail. It's going to be backed with rock, as you saw a couple of those in the photos were, and it's also somewhat based a little bit in design on the Helm's Deep models that many people have created. Overall, I found it a good guide to sort of orchestrate the construction, whereby there's a large outer wall, a raised walkway coming off of it, towers embedded in the wall, as well as a secondary wall on the inside with a larger main tower, and that's the the general layout with some stairs and ramps and whatnot. But what I thought is, before I begin on the major construction, not only because that's going to require a lot of studio space for storage, which I'm always, short on, I wanted to start something small to capture the thematic feel of it. Now, not shown on this diagram are buttresses that I'd like to put off of the wall at several locations to just give it a little more detail. Obviously, from those photos, detail is what's going to make it look fantastic, and I really want to step it up several notches with this project. So what I'd like to do is add in at least 2 or 3 buttresses in an area like this, and a couple flanking the walkway, and then have similar kinds of architecture on the towers to reflect the architecture on the buttresses, and then carry that forward as I design and build it up into the larger towers. I'd like to have a standalone tower here that has a raised walkway to the top of the wall and a much larger main tower. So this is just a brief overview, and we'll revisit some of this as the project progresses, but I wanted to give you a sense of where I'm starting. So the first thing I constructed is not something I'm going to use. I wanted to capture the spikiness, the ribbed, multi-layered feel, something with, let me pan back a little bit on this here. So I wanted to capture something with the spiky feel. I liked the idea of a bladed look. Many of the towers have fins that are very sharp and aggressive looking. And so what I decided is I thought I would cut a 1-inch piece of foam, taper it to the top. Then, as I began to look at it, I felt like it seemed too static, but originally I wanted to avoid putting in stone blocks, as many of the photos don't include stone blocks in them, but again, as I mentioned in the video, the pictures, I think that's a factor of scale. So right away it started to look wrong to me, but I'm stubborn and I decided to keep going with it and see what I could do. So I added in some styrene. Now this is all liquid green stuff. I was trying to seal up these cracks. It's a bit messy. It does come off the styrene though, so I was going to scrape and sand this, and I may save this piece for future work down the road. But I planed. Look at how thin those sheets are. Isn't that nice? I planed some foam to create these layered dressings on the edge of the buttress, and this is meant to be a buttress against the wall, as I was saying before. Well, as soon as I got done with it, I thought, that doesn't look very Mordor-like. It looks more Dark Elf-like, and I'm not doing sci-fi, and what I had created here looked very sci-fi to me. So then I was looking at it upside down, maybe supporting the raised walkway. Looks a little bit better that way, but it has something to do with the direction of the curves, the breadth of the curves, the sweeping line. It's too sci-fi, and especially if I don't put in stonework, it's just not working. And after spending a day on this piece, I decided that I don't like it. That's how a day goes sometimes in TerranScapes. So I threw that aside, and I started again on a fresh piece today. And this is what I came up with. I decided that the stonework, this is a big piece, these are 10 inches tall. The walls are going to be 12. So I needed something that's going to come very close to the top, but I wanted to leave a couple inches at the top for dressing, overhangs, other kinds of artistic work that will be done down the road that I actually haven't planned, but I'll come to as I get there. And I decided to embrace going with the stonework and sculpting in blocks. I thought I didn't want to do that because that's a lot of carving for the entire structure, but in the end I said screw it. I think it looks better and it looks a little bit more medieval. What I did then is I added in some thin foam plates, which I planed down. This was a mistake in the carving, so I've spackled these in. I got to clean that up a little bit before I go on. But what I did is I added in some foam plates and then added in spikes. These are sanded down 5/8" dowels, and then these are sanded down toothpicks. And I thought the idea being that after the stonework has been laid, then iron plates have been affixed to it that have the spikes that carry that, so that it gives it that sort of menacing look. And I, quite frankly, like this a lot. I added a thin dressing on the side here to bulk it up a little bit and give it a little bit more appeal. And I felt very good about this as a first start, and I feel much better about where I'm going with the project now. So this does mean that I'll be doing brickwork on most of the surfaces, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. I used the hot wire engraving tool for this, and after striking a few lines, I was able to get some of these to come out pretty quickly, so it's not quite as arduous as I thought. So this is the first look at a much, much larger project. The plan right now is that if I need, say, a dozen of these, which I think is realistic, it is a little bit thicker than my original plan. I went with a 1-inch piece for this one, and I decided to go with a full 1.5 inch. So this is quite a bulky piece, but my plan right now is to cast these. By casting them, I'll be able to replicate them much more quickly, and I'll be able to put in as much detail as I want on a single piece and not worry about having to do all of that work a dozen times over or more. I do plan on probably putting in some distressing on the stones. This isn't finished yet, but this is just at this mock-up stage. So distressing some of the stonework will probably happen, and I'm going to judge that a little bit later on after I've sort of rested and my head is cleared from the project. Sometimes I have to step away from something for a couple days before I come back to it. One of the concerns I have with casting, however, are all these points. This is a very, let me bring it right up here so you can see that up close, if it's going to focus. There we go. And of course I have to fill around some of the holes and smooth that out. That'll happen a little bit later as well. But getting all of those points to cast properly potentially could be very difficult. So if I make up the mold and I find I cannot get resin consistently into all those points, as there are, obviously a lot of spots where bubbles can show in a piece like this. Why isn't that not focusing? There we go. Then the plan is to invest in a pressure chamber so that I can begin pressure casting. My hope, though, is not to have to fill this entirely with resin, as it's going to be very heavy. So I'd like to do my typical resin shell with a foam backing, which is how I do most of my large pieces. But that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So maybe some equipment upgrades for this project, something I've been eyeing for a little while in any case, and I'm not going to let my equipment or other kinds of things interfere with my creativity on the project. My goal is to make this the best that I can and to try to embellish it as much as I can. I'd like to make this a real showpiece, and so I'm going to adapt and grow as I need to complete it to the level that I want to see it done. So, overall, I hope that gives you a sense of what kind of a project I've undertaken. Call me mad. But I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's going to challenge me in some ways that I need to be challenged in. The only way I grow is if I force myself to grow, and I needed to feel confident at this point that I could handle a project like this, and I think I can. But it's going to be the largest project I've done to date, and it's going to require a lot of new techniques that I probably don't even realize I need at this point. So we'll grow together with it, and I'll show you how it's evolving as progress happens. And again, I just wanted to mention, that I feel like, I don't know, I just want to, for those of you who are interested in foam carving, the 3D scroll table really did a nice job and allowed me to do some unique cuts and some beveling and some planing and some interesting cuts that I probably could not have done without it. So I'm going to be pushing the table as well along with this project and seeing how it holds up, as I plan on doing most of the cuts with it, and that'll give it sort of a run for its money, and we can revisit that again a little bit later on. And I'd like to maybe show you how some of these cuts have been done, but when I'm in the thick of it and I'm really trying to concentrate on being creative and thinking about and looking down the road and how will this piece cast, and well, am I willing to do this much work on all the pieces, and how's this going to match up and all that, I really can't also set up the camera and the lights and all of that and do all of that. So I'll probably have to do something dedicated and show you at least a few of the techniques that I've developed or tapped into, I should say, with the table, and give you a sense of how you could recreate some of these kinds of cuts on your own. But that probably won't happen for a little while, so hopefully you'll be patient. But I've gone on long enough. I promised myself I wouldn't be doing lots of long videos, and here I am doing another one, hot on the heels. So I'm going to say once again thank you for watching and joining me, and hopefully you look forward to more videos on this project as much as I do. And I'll talk to you soon.